Now, the standard rule of thumb says a sports game opening is supposed to get your adrenaline pumping, make you want to run through a brick wall. But as the upbeat music kicked in on this one, I didn't feel hype at all. I felt a cold, deep-seated wave of anxiety. Why? Because I knew absolutely nothing about baseball. I've never played it, I've never watched the game, and where I'm from, it's basically non-existent. At that moment, all I knew was that it involved bats, and from the little I'd seen, a suspicious amount of standing around.
Sit down, buddy, you're toast.
Hello and welcome back to the PlayStation Marathon, the series where I'm playing through every single game released on the original PlayStation in alphabetical order. The goal here is to see exactly what this massive library looks like from the perspective of a complete newcomer, entirely free from childhood memories or modern bias. Today we're on game number 5, 3D Baseball, a North American sports game released in late 1996 by Crystal Dynamics. Going into this one, my expectations were non-existent because I literally lacked any baseline for what a great digital baseball experience was even supposed to feel like. But instead of just closing my eyes and hammering buttons blindly, I decided to do something different. I spent hours attempting to learn how the sport actually functions before it completely broke my brain. Let's look at the absolute crisis of a crash course I had to give myself just to make it past the main menu screens. Before we step up to the home plate, however, we need to understand where 3D Baseball fits into the 32-bit timeline. Released in December of 1996, this title was developed and published directly by Crystal Dynamics, with distribution handled by Activision. If you hear the name Crystal Dynamics today, your mind might immediately go to some of their high-budget action-adventure games like the Tomb Raider. But back in the mid-90s, the landscape was a digital Wild West, and everyone was scrambling to claim a piece of the booming sports market. And when you are a mid-sized developer trying to stand out against rising corporate giants like EA Sports or Sega, you need a serious gimmick to survive. Crystal Dynamics went all in on licensing and presentation. They successfully locked down the official Major League Baseball Players Association license. This allowed them to pack the disc with over 700 real Major League players, complete with historical statistics and individual batting stances. However, they couldn't secure the actual Major League Baseball team or stadium licenses, so while you have real human athletes, they play for unbranded cities in 4 completely fictional, imaginary environments like Crystal Yards or the stadium, creating this bizarre parallel universe where the players are entirely real, but the historic franchises they play for are non-existent. But the main selling point of 3D Baseball wasn't just the player roster, it was also the engineering fueling the polygons. Crystal Dynamics marketed this project aggressively around a proprietary animation engine called Real Motion Control. Game designer Sam Player, yes that's his real name, explained at the time that standard motion capture titles looked incredibly choppy because mid-90s hardware simply couldn't store all the heavy animation frames required. Most sports titles ended up only displaying every 5th frame or so, creating a stuttering mess. To fix this, Crystal Dynamics built 3D characters with moving joints, programming the game to calculate how those joints should naturally bend. The resulting technology was meant to provide unparalleled fluid realism, and honestly, they did an impressive job all things considered. Seeing these fully 3D model players move looks genuinely impressive for a late 1996 release. Of course, none of that joint tracking math matters if you don't even understand what the objective is. Determined not to look like an idiot on the internet, I spent a good portion of my week reading online articles and watching YouTube videos just to comprehend the foundational guidelines of the sport. I memorized just enough baseball to sound like I knew what I was talking about. Innings, strikes, bases, runs, grand slams, etc. I felt like a tactical genius. But when I actually loaded into a game, I realized I hadn't even looked at the control layout once, and I instantly lost my bearings as a result. The manual for this game is what I can only describe as a total mess of controls. You have separate layouts for pitching, batting, base running and defensive tracking amongst so many others. Pitching alone has different inputs for fastballs, changeups and breaking balls, while batting lets you adjust your stance, choose between full and check swings, and even aim your hits. It's an incredible amount of information to manage under pressure. Recognizing my utter lack of skill, I immediately made 2 defensive decisions. I toggled field into auto, letting the computer automatically move players into position while I handled the throwing, and I also turned errors completely off. But even with these changes, I was still struggling to keep up with the pacing. As for whether the controls ever clicked, not really if I'm honest. And I don't think that's the game's fault. I think that's just me trying to learn the workings of an entire sport and a confusing control scheme in a short period of time. There just wasn't a lot of room to fully relax into the game. Visually, 3D Baseball holds up remarkably well. The player models and animations look sharp for the era thanks to the real motion control technology powering the game. Of course, you can easily spot the hardware limitations of 1996, but it never crosses the line into looking repulsive or making you say, "Ew, get this off my face." As for the audio design, the game features commentary from CNN sportscaster Van Elright. He recorded over 1,000 lines for this game, which added an incredible amount of professionalism to the overall experience.
A shot to the left side. Oh, what is he thinking?
Musically though, there isn't much to say. You only get the menu theme, which is fine since sports games from this era rarely leaned on music. The commentary is doing the heavy lifting and it does it well. Looking back at how critics received 3D baseball when it launched, opinions were completely fractured across the industry. Outlets like Game Revolution handed it a solid B+, praising the outstanding 3D graphics, genuine player stances, and excellent audio effects. GameSpot similarly highlighted the realism and superb commentary, though they were noticeably annoyed by the total omission of real MLB team logos and the absence of a dedicated home run derby or playoff mode. On the other end of the aisle, magazines like GamePro absolutely dragged this game. They argue that while the visuals ranked among the best of any baseball title from that era, the gameplay itself was among the worst. They heavily slammed the physics engine for being highly inaccurate and criticized the camera work, ultimately concluding that it lacked the polish found in yearly juggernauts like EA's Triple Play or Sony's own MLB pennant race. So where does that leave a newcomer like me? Well, after spending roughly 12 hours on this game, I can proudly say that I had a total blast playing it, even though I was totally confused most of the time. I can't confidently tell you if this game nails the feel of real baseball because I still don't have a ton to compare it to. What I can tell you is that this game, almost by accident, turned baseball from a complete mystery into something I genuinely wanted to learn more about. In fact, I ended up streaming my first real baseball game afterwards just to see how close the game got it. Would I recommend it today? Honestly, yeah, especially given the fact that you can enjoy this for free thanks to emulation. If you're into retro sports games and you already know baseball, I think you have a lot of fun with this one. And if you're like me, a total novice to the sport, I still encourage you to try it. For the actual baseball fans watching, have any of you played this one before? I'd love to know how it felt from the other side when you already knew what you were looking at. And for everyone else who is in the same boat as I was, has my experience made you even a little curious to check out this game? Let me know down below. As for where this sits in the marathon so far, it's not that game that's going to define this channel, but it's the first one that genuinely taught me something outside the game itself, and that's a nice change of pace. Next up on the marathon, we are moving on to game number 6, where we will be sliding right back into the world of extreme racing with 3 Extreme, the direct sequel to the game we covered last week. I'm really excited to see how that one goes. Thank you so much for watching, hanging out and supporting this massive journey. If you enjoyed this look at a complete beginner discovering baseball through a 1996 video game, please hit that like button and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single step of this marathon. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you in the next episode.